The text message arrived while I was cruising at 37,000 feet over Kansas, and it changed everything. Jason, you need to see this. Your wife just welcomed a visitor. He's still there. The photo that followed showed my neighbor Adam's view through his kitchen window straight into my backyard. Kelly in that black negligee I bought her for our anniversary, arms wrapped around some muscle-bound stranger I'd never seen before. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I'm Jason Miller, 41 years old, commercial pilot for Southwest Airlines, and until that moment, I thought I had a pretty good handle on my life. 15 years of marriage to Kelly, a nice house in Plano, Texas, 2 dogs, and a job that kept me flying 3 days a week with decent pay. Sure, Kelly had been distant lately, spending more time at the gym where she worked as a fitness instructor, but I figured it was just her usual obsession with staying in shape. The plane's autopilot hummed quietly as I stared at my phone screen, my hands trembling slightly. The stranger in the photo was tall, probably late 20s, with the kind of sculpted physique that screamed personal trainer. He was wearing workout clothes and had his hands all over my wife like he owned her. "Everything okay up there, Captain Miller?" My co-pilot Dave noticed my expression. "Just some weather reports," I lied, forcing a smile. "Nothing we can't handle." But inside, I was already planning. 3 more hours until we landed in Dallas, then another hour to get home. Plenty of time to think about what I was going to do with this information. I texted Adam back, "Can you keep an eye on things? I'll be home by 6. His response came immediately. "Already on it. This isn't the first time, Jason. We need to talk." My stomach dropped. Not the first time. How long had this been going on? How many flights had I taken while some stranger was in my house, in my bed, with my wife? The rest of the flight passed in a blur. I went through the motions, radio calls, landing preparations, post-flight checks, but my mind was elsewhere. By the time we touched down at Dallas Love Field, I had made my decision. I wasn't going to confront Kelly immediately. I was going to gather evidence first, find out exactly what was happening, and then decide how to handle it. Adam was waiting in my driveway when I pulled up in my pickup truck. He's a good neighbor, the kind of guy who'll help you move furniture or lend you his lawnmower without asking questions. Mid-30s, works in IT, divorced, and apparently more observant than I'd given him credit for. "How long?" I asked without preamble. "At least 3 weeks that I've noticed. Always when you're on flights. Same guy every time. Drives a red Jeep Wrangler, parks it right in your driveway like he belongs there." I felt my jaw clench. "What's his name?" "Troy Banks." I did some digging. He works at that new gym downtown, Apex Fitness. Apparently he's been giving Kelly private training sessions. Adam made air quotes with obvious disgust. Kelly's car wasn't in the driveway, probably still at the gym or wherever she went with her boy toy. I unlocked the front door and immediately noticed things were different. The living room had been rearranged slightly, there was a beer bottle in the trash that wasn't my brand, and the guest bathroom had clearly been used by someone else. "I've got more photos," Adam said quietly. "From different days. You sure you want to see them?" I nodded, though I wasn't sure at all. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through a series of images that felt like punches to the gut. Kelly and Troy by the pool, Kelly leading him into the house, Troy leaving early in the morning wearing different clothes than he'd arrived in. The final photo showed them in my truck, parked in the garage, Kelly straddling him in the driver's seat. "Snake," I whispered. "Jason, I'm sorry. I debated whether to tell you, but no, you did the right thing." I took a deep breath, trying to process everything. "I need to think about this. Can you do me a favor and keep watching? Don't let them know you're onto them." "Of course. What are you going to do?" I looked around my house, my sanctuary that had been violated by a stranger, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger exactly, but something more calculating, I'm going to teach them both a lesson they'll never forget. The next morning, Kelly acted completely normal. She made coffee, chatted about her day, and kissed me goodbye before heading to work, just like she had for 15 years. If I hadn't seen the photos, I never would have suspected anything. She was that good at lying. I had a 3-day break between flights, which gave me time to do some investigating. First stop was Apex Fitness, the upscale gym where both Kelly and her boyfriend worked. I'd never been there before. Kelly always said it was too intense for casual members and that I should stick to the community center. The place was impressive, I had to admit. State-of-the-art equipment, juice bar, separate areas for different types of training. And there he was, Troy Banks, leading a middle-aged woman through what looked like a very hands-on stretching routine. He was exactly what I'd expected. Tall, muscular, probably spent more on protein powder than I did on groceries. The kind of guy who wore tank tops to show off his physique and probably took selfies in the gym mirrors. What I hadn't expected was how young he looked. This kid was barely out of college and he was sleeping with my wife. I watched him for an hour from the parking lot, taking notes on his schedule, his clients, his habits. He drove that red Jeep Wrangler like he was auditioning for an action movie, music blasting, windows down. Everything about him screamed arrogance. Kelly appeared around noon, and I watched her interact with Troy. To anyone else, they probably looked professional. A quick conversation by the front desk, some shared laughter. But I knew what to look for now. The way she touched his arm when she talked to him. The way he looked at her when he thought no one was watching. The way they both glanced around before disappearing into the back office together. My phone buzzed with a text from Kelly. "Working late tonight, don't wait up." I texted back, "No problem. Safe flight tomorrow. Love you." The lie came so easily it surprised me. That evening, I drove back to the gym and waited. Sure enough, Kelly's car was still there at closing time, along with Troy's Jeep. I positioned myself across the street and watched the lights go out one by one until only the back office remained lit. At 9:30, they emerged together. Kelly looked around nervously before getting into Troy's Jeep. I followed them at a distance, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. They went to a sports bar called Rookies, the kind of place with neon beer signs and peanut shells on the floor. Through the window, I watched them sit in a corner booth, Troy's arm around Kelly's shoulders, both of them laughing like teenagers. Kelly was wearing a tight dress I'd never seen before and had done something different with her hair. She looked beautiful and happy and completely comfortable with this other man. I sat in my truck in the parking lot and felt something break inside me, not just my heart. That had been cracking since I saw Adam's first photo. This was something deeper. My faith in the person I'd shared my life with for 15 years. My belief that our marriage meant something. But along with the pain came clarity. I wasn't going to be the cuckolded husband who begged his wife to come back. I wasn't going to fight for someone who clearly didn't want to be fought for. I was going to make them both pay for what they'd done to me, and I was going to do it in a way they'd never see coming. I pulled out my phone and called Adam. "I need your help with something," I said when he answered. "How good are you with computers?" "Pretty good. Why?" "I want to know everything about Troy Banks, where he lives, where he works, who he knows, what kind of trouble he might already be in. Can you do that?" There was a pause. "Jason, what are you planning?" "Nothing illegal. I just want to level the playing field. Give me 24 hours. Adam delivered more than I'd hoped for. Troy Banks wasn't just Kelly's boy toy. He was a small-time hustler with his fingers in several questionable pies. "He's been skimming money from private training sessions," Adam explained, spreading printouts across my kitchen table. "Taking cash payments and not reporting them to the gym. Plus, he's been selling supplements without a license and probably running some kind of steroid operation out of his apartment." The apartment was a cheap complex on the wrong side of town, nothing like the upscale image he projected at the gym. According to Adam's research, Troy was behind on rent, had maxed out 3 credit cards, and was driving the Jeep on a loan he could barely afford. So he's using Kelly, I said, studying the financial records Adam had somehow obtained. Looks like it. Your wife makes good money at that gym, and she's been paying for a lot of their dates. Check this out. He showed me Kelly's credit card statements, which he'd accessed through our joint account. Expensive dinners, hotel rooms, shopping trips to buy clothes that never made it into our closet. I felt sick, not just because of the betrayal, but because of how stupid I'd been. The signs had all been there. Kelly's new clothes, her improved mood, her sudden interest in working late. I'd been so focused on my flights and my own routine that I'd missed my wife falling in love with someone else. There's more, Adam continued. Troy's been bragging about Kelly to his buddies, showing off photos, talking about how he's got this older woman wrapped around his finger. Some of the guys at his gym think it's hilarious. That did it. The humiliation was one thing, but the idea that they were laughing about it, that Kelly was just another conquest for this kid to brag about, ignited something cold and furious in my chest. What do you want to do? Adam asked. I looked at all the evidence spread across my table, the photos, the financial records, the character assassination of my marriage, and made my decision. I want to destroy them both, completely. But I want to do it smart, so they never see it coming and they can't trace it back to me. Adam grinned. Now you're talking my language. We spent the next 2 hours planning. The beauty of Troy's situation was that he'd already set himself up for failure. All we had to do was give him a push in the right direction. First, we'd expose his financial irregularities to the gym management. Adam had already prepared an anonymous package with documentation of Troy's unreported income and supplement sales. Second, we'd make sure his landlord knew about the steroid operation. A few anonymous tips to the right people would have his apartment searched and his lease terminated. Third, and most importantly, we'd document everything Kelly and Troy did together, building a comprehensive record of their affair that I could use in divorce proceedings. What about Kelly? Adam asked. She's going to figure out that you know. Not yet. I want her to think everything is normal until the trap is completely set. Let her get comfortable. Let her think she's gotten away with it. The fall will be so much harder. That night, Kelly came home at midnight, claiming she'd been at a work conference. She smelled like Troy's cologne and had a hickey on her neck that she'd tried to cover with makeup. How was your day? She asked, kissing my cheek like nothing had happened. Quiet. Just caught up on some reading. How was the conference? Boring. Just the usual fitness industry stuff. She was already heading toward the bedroom, eager to end the conversation. I waited until she was in the shower, then checked her purse. There was a receipt from Rookies dated 2 hours earlier, and a hotel key card she'd forgotten to throw away. Perfect. More evidence for the file. 3 days later, Troy Banks was fired from Apex Fitness. I wasn't there to see it happen, but Adam had positioned himself in the parking lot with a clear view through the gym's front windows. According to his report, Troy was called into the manager's office around 10 a.m. and emerged 20 minutes later carrying a cardboard box, his face red with anger and embarrassment. The anonymous package Adam had prepared worked perfectly. The gym's management had no choice but to terminate Troy once they saw documented evidence of his unreported income and illegal supplement sales. They couldn't risk their business license over one employee, no matter how popular he was with certain clients. Kelly came home that evening in a terrible mood, which she tried to hide behind complaints about drama at work. One of the trainers got fired today, she said, not meeting my eyes. It's going to mess up everyone's schedule. That's too bad. Anyone I know? No, just some guy. Troy something. He was a good trainer. I could hear the emotion in her voice, the carefully controlled grief for her lover's professional downfall. She had no idea I was the one who'd orchestrated it. I'm sure they'll find someone else, I said mildly. These things usually work out. That night, Kelly was on her phone constantly, texting someone with increasing frustration. I pretended to be asleep and watched her through half-closed eyes as she typed and deleted messages, her face illuminated by the screen's glow. The next morning, I followed her to Troy's apartment complex. She parked outside his building and went up to the second floor. Through the window, I could see them arguing. Troy was gesticulating wildly, probably blaming everyone but himself for his situation, while Kelly tried to calm him down. She stayed for 2 hours. When she came out, her eyes were red and she looked exhausted. That evening, Adam called with an update. The landlord served Troy an eviction notice this morning. Apparently, someone tipped off the police about suspicious activity in his apartment. They didn't find enough for an arrest, but the landlord doesn't want that kind of attention on his property. How long does he have? 30 days, but his lease is month to month, so the landlord can make his life pretty miserable in the meantime. I felt a grim satisfaction. Troy's carefully constructed life was falling apart piece by piece, and he had no idea why. From his perspective, it was just bad luck, getting fired and evicted in the same week. He couldn't possibly connect it to the married woman he was sleeping with. But Kelly was starting to suspect something. That weekend, she suggested we go out to dinner, just the two of us. It was the first time she'd wanted to spend alone time with me in months. "Is everything okay?" she asked over appetizers at our usual restaurant. "You seem different lately." "Different how?" "I don't know. Distant, maybe? Like you're thinking about something else?" I looked across the table at my wife of 15 years. She was still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with in college. But now I could see the guilt in her eyes, the way she couldn't quite meet my gaze, the nervous energy that came from living a double life. "I've just been thinking about us," I said truthfully. "About what we want from the next 15 years. She reached across the table and took my hand. Her wedding ring caught the light from the candle between us. "I want us to be happy," she said. "I know I've been working a lot lately, but it's important to me. The gym, staying in shape, feeling good about myself. You understand that, right?" "Of course. I want you to be happy too." She smiled, relieved. She thought she'd successfully deflected my suspicion, convinced me that her distance was just about work and self-improvement. She had no idea that I knew exactly what kind of exercise she'd been getting. "I love you, Jason," she said, squeezing my hand. "I love you too," I replied, and meant it. That was the most painful part. I did still love her, even knowing what she'd done. But love wasn't enough anymore. Not when it was built on lies and betrayal. That night, as Kelly slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and planned the next phase of my revenge. 2 weeks later, Troy Banks was living in his Jeep. The eviction had gone through faster than expected when his landlord discovered unpaid utilities and lease violations. According to Adam's surveillance, Troy was now showering at a 24-hour gym across town and sleeping in parking lots. Kelly was trying to help him, of course. I'd been monitoring our joint bank account and noticed several large cash withdrawals that coincided with her errands. She was probably giving him money for food and gas, maybe even looking for a new place for him to live. But Troy's problems were multiplying faster than Kelly could solve them. The state licensing board had opened an investigation into his supplement sales. His car insurance had been canceled for non-payment. And thanks to some carefully planted rumors Adam had spread through social media, several of Troy's former clients were questioning whether he'd been overcharging them for services. The beauty of the plan was that none of it could be traced back to me. Every consequence Troy faced was the natural result of his own bad choices and illegal activities. I hadn't created his problems, I just made sure they all came due at the same time. Kelly was getting desperate. She'd started working extra hours at the gym, probably trying to earn money to support her unemployed boyfriend. She was distracted, irritable, and making mistakes she never would have made before. That's when I decided to introduce myself to Troy. I found him at the 24-hour gym on a Thursday evening, using their shower facilities. I waited in the parking lot until he came out, then approached him casually. "Excuse me, are you Troy Banks?" He looked up, suspicious. Up close, he was younger than I'd thought, maybe 26 or 27. Without the gym lighting and professional setting, he looked tired and desperate. "Yeah, who's asking?" "My name's Jason Miller. I think you know my wife, Kelly." The color drained from his face. For a moment, I thought he might run, but he was trapped between me and his Jeep. "Look, man, I don't know what you think. I know exactly what I think. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" He straightened up, trying to look intimidating. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you have two choices. You can disappear from Kelly's life completely and permanently, or I can make your current problems look like a minor inconvenience." "Are you threatening me?" I smiled. "I'm offering you advice. You're a smart guy, Troy. You've got to realize that sleeping with married women is a dangerous hobby, especially when you're already in as much trouble as you are." His hands clenched into fists, but he didn't move. He was angry, but he wasn't stupid. He could see that his life was falling apart, and he was starting to understand that it might not be coincidence. "You can't prove anything," he said. "I don't have to prove anything. I just have to keep letting you prove what kind of person you are. How long do you think it'll be before the IRS gets interested in all that unreported income? How long before your steroid customers start wondering who might have given their names to the police?" His face went pale. "I never sold steroids." "Maybe not, but you know people who do, and you know people who buy them. In my experience, when people get desperate, they start talking to anyone who'll listen. Police, prosecutors, reporters." I let that sink in for a moment, then continued. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stop seeing Kelly. You're going to stop calling her, texting her, and showing up at her work. You're going to find somewhere else to live, preferably in another state. And if I ever see you near my wife again, I'm going to stop being subtle about ruining your life." Troy stared at me for a long moment, then got into his Jeep without another word. As he drove away, I felt a cold satisfaction. Phase 1 was complete. I'd separated the players and made Troy understand that continuing the affair would have serious consequences. But I wasn't done with either of them yet. Kelly knew something was wrong the moment Troy stopped answering her calls. I watched her over the next few days as she tried to reach him. Text messages that went unanswered, phone calls that went straight to voicemail, trips to places where she thought she might find him. She was worried and confused, and trying desperately to hide it from me. Finally, she cracked. "Jason, I need to tell you something," she said one evening after dinner. We were sitting in the living room, the TV on, but neither of us watching it. "Okay." She took a deep breath, and for a moment I thought she was going to confess everything. Instead, she said, "I think someone at work might be stalking me." "What do you mean?" "There was this trainer, Troy, who got fired a few weeks ago. He'd been paying attention to me, maybe too much attention, and now I think he might be following me around." It was masterful, really. She was setting up Troy as the villain, casting herself as the victim, and preparing me to be the protective husband. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have fallen for it completely. "Have you seen him following you?" "Not exactly, but I have this feeling, like someone's watching me. And there were some weird incidents at work, people asking questions about him and me." "What kind of questions?" She hesitated. "Whether we were close. People love to gossip, you know. Just because I was friendly with him, they assumed there was something more going on." "Was there?" The question hung in the air between us. Kelly looked directly at me for the first time in weeks, her eyes wide and innocent. "Of course not. I'm married to you. I would never—" "Jason, how could you even ask that?" "I'm sorry. I just want to make sure you're safe." She moved closer to me on the couch, taking my hand in both of hers. "I love you. Only you." I need you to believe that." I looked into her eyes I'd been looking into for 15 years, and saw nothing but lies. "I believe you," I said. That night, after Kelly fell asleep, I went into my home office and opened the file I'd been building. Photos of Kelly and Troy together, credit card statements showing their dates, hotel receipts, text message records Adam had somehow obtained. Everything I needed to prove that my wife had been having an affair for months. But I wasn't ready to use it yet. I wanted Kelly to dig herself deeper into the lie she'd created. I wanted her to feel safe and confident, so that when the truth came out, it would destroy her completely. The next morning, I called in sick to work and followed Kelly to the gym. She spent the day asking her coworkers about Troy, trying to find out where he'd gone. No one had seen him since his firing, and the gym's management wasn't giving out any information about former employees. That evening, Kelly came home frustrated and anxious. "Any luck finding information about your stalker?" I asked. "No, it's like he just disappeared." "Maybe that's a good thing. If he was really bothering you, maybe he got the message and moved on." "Maybe." But she didn't look relieved. She looked worried and sad, like someone who'd lost something important. Over the next week, Kelly went through what I recognized as the stages of grief. Denial that Troy was really gone, anger at his sudden disappearance, bargaining with mutual friends to help her find him, depression when she realized he wasn't coming back. I watched it all with cold fascination. This was what love looked like when it was stripped of pretense and social expectations. Kelly was mourning the loss of her lover while lying next to her husband every night, and she was doing it with an Oscar-worthy performance of normalcy. But I could see the cracks forming. She was drinking more wine with dinner. She was distracted during conversations. She was spending hours on her phone, probably searching social media for any trace of Troy. Finally, I decided it was time for the next phase. "Kelly," I said one evening as we were getting ready for bed, "I've been thinking about what you said, about that trainer who was bothering you. What about it? I think you should report it to the police. If he really was stalking you, there should be a record of it. And if he shows up again, you'll want to have established a paper trail." She froze, her hand halfway to the light switch. "I don't think that's necessary." "Why not? If someone was making my wife uncomfortable, I'd want to make sure he couldn't do it again." "It's just, I don't have any real evidence. It was more of a feeling than anything concrete." "But you said people at work were asking questions about the two of you. That suggests there was some kind of observable behavior." Kelly turned off the light and got into bed without answering. In the darkness, I could hear her breathing, quick and shallow. "Jason," she said finally, "can we just drop it? I don't want to make a big deal out of nothing." "Of course. But if anything else happens, promise me you'll tell me immediately." "I promise." It was the first honest thing she'd said in months. I filed for divorce on a Tuesday morning while Kelly was at work. I'd spent weeks preparing for this moment, gathering evidence, consulting with lawyers, and planning my strategy. The petition was comprehensive and devastating: adultery, abandonment of marital duties, financial misconduct. I had photos, credit card records, witness statements from Adam, and a detailed timeline of Kelly's affair with Troy Banks. My lawyer, Patricia Chen, was a sharp woman in her 50s who specialized in high-conflict divorces. "This is very thorough," she said, reviewing my documentation. "Your wife's attorney is going to have a hard time disputing any of this." "Good. I want her to understand exactly what she's losing." "What are your goals here, Jason? Full custody of assets? Spousal support? Public vindication?" "I want her to walk away with nothing but the clothes on her back and the knowledge that her choices have consequences." Patricia nodded approvingly. "I can work with that." Kelly was served with papers at the gym that afternoon. According to Adam, who happened to be working out there at the time, she opened the envelope in front of several co-workers and immediately broke down crying. The papers included not only the divorce petition but also copies of the most damning evidence: photos of her and Troy together, credit card statements, hotel receipts. She came home that evening like a woman walking to her execution. "Jason," she said, standing in the doorway of my office. "We need to talk." I looked up from my computer, where I'd been reviewing flight schedules. "About what?" She held up the divorce papers. "About this." "What about it? It seems pretty self-explanatory." "How long have you known?" "About Troy? Since the beginning. My neighbor Adam saw him coming and going while I was on flights. He thought I should know that my wife was entertaining other men in our home." Kelly sank into the chair across from my desk, the fight going out of her all at once. "I'm sorry." "For which part? The affair? The lying? Using our joint account to pay for your dates? Or bringing him into our house, into our bed?" "All of it. I'm sorry for all of it." "Why?" She looked up at me, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean, why did you do it? 15 years of marriage and you threw it away for some kid who was using you for money and bragging about you to his friends. I genuinely don't understand the math." Kelly started crying then, deep sobs that shook her whole body. I felt old, invisible, like I was just going through the motions of living, and Troy made me feel alive again, desired, like I was worth something. "You were worth something. You were worth 15 years of my life, my loyalty, my love. But apparently, that wasn't enough. It wasn't about you. Everything about this was about me." I slammed my hand on the desk, making her jump. "You used my money, my house, my trust. You made me look like a fool to our neighbors, our friends, everyone who knew us. You turned our marriage into a joke, and our home into a place I can't stand to be. Jason, please. Where is he now, Kelly? Your young lover who made you feel so alive." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I don't know. He stopped returning my calls, just disappeared." "Did you ever wonder why?" Something in my tone made her look up sharply. "What do you mean?" "I mean, did you ever wonder why Troy's life fell apart so quickly? The firing, the eviction, the investigation into his business practices?" Her face went pale. What did you do?" "I didn't do anything illegal. I just made sure that the right people knew about the illegal things Troy was already doing. Amazing how quickly a house of cards falls down when someone gives it a little push." "You destroyed his life." "No, Kelly. He destroyed his own life by making bad choices. I just made sure he faced the consequences all at once, instead of being able to spread them out over time." She stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. "I don't know who you are anymore. I'm the same person I've always been. The difference is, now you know what happens when you betray me." Kelly stood up slowly, still holding the divorce papers. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to sign the papers and move out of my house. I want you to take responsibility for what you've done instead of playing the victim. And I want you to understand that this is what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness." "And if I don't sign?" I smiled coldly. "Then we go to court, and all of this becomes public record. Your affair, the financial details, everything. Your choice." She left the room without another word. Kelly signed the papers 3 days later. She also moved out, taking only her personal belongings and leaving behind 15 years of shared memories. The house felt different without her, cleaner somehow, like a weight had been lifted. Adam came over that evening with a bottle of whiskey and a satisfied expression. "How does it feel?" he asked, as we sat on my back deck, looking out at the yard where I'd first seen photos of my wife with another man. "Empty," I admitted, "but good empty. Like I finally cleaned out a closet that was full of junk." "Any regrets?" I thought about it for a moment. "I regret that it came to this. I regret that she made choices that forced me to become someone I never wanted to be. But I don't regret how I handled it." "What about Troy? What about him? Do you know where he ended up?" I took a sip of whiskey and watched the sun set behind the trees. "Last I heard, He was working at a gym in Oklahoma. Apparently, he learned his lesson about married women. And Kelly? Kelly's living with her sister in Austin. She got a job at a small fitness studio, teaching yoga classes. From what I hear, she's telling people that we grew apart, that it was a mutual decision. Adam laughed. Mutual. Right. Let her tell whatever story she needs to tell. I know the truth, and so does she. That's what matters. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, drinking whiskey and watching the sky turn dark. Finally, Adam spoke up. You know, when I first saw Troy at your house, I thought about just minding my own business, pretending I didn't see anything. Why didn't you? Because you're a good guy, Jason. You deserved better than what she was doing to you. And because I knew that if someone was betraying me like that, I'd want to know about it. I raised my glass to him. To good neighbors. To good neighbors, he agreed. The next morning, I went back to work. Flying again felt good. Being up in the sky, away from the complications of ground-based relationships, focused on the simple task of getting people safely from one place to another. My co-pilot on the first flight was a young woman named Sarah, recently hired by the airline. During our pre-flight check, she asked about the tan line on my ring finger. Divorce, I said simply. I'm sorry, that must be hard. It was, but sometimes hard things are necessary things. She nodded, like she understood, and we spent the rest of the flight talking about aviation, weather patterns, and the simple pleasure of being good at your job. 3 months later, I got a call from Patricia Chen, my divorce attorney. Kelly's attorney contacted me, she said. She wants to know if you'd be open to mediation. She's apparently having some financial difficulties and was hoping you might consider providing some temporary support. What kind of difficulties? The usual. Trouble finding work that pays as well as her previous job, higher living expenses, that sort of thing. I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. No. Are you sure? It might be worth considering, just to avoid any future legal complications. Patricia, I gave Kelly 15 years of support. I supported her career, her dreams, her choices. The only thing I asked for in return was loyalty. She chose to give that to someone else, so now she gets to live with the consequences of that choice. Understood. I'll let her attorney know. After I hung up, I realized I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no regret. Kelly had become a stranger to me, someone I used to know who had made bad choices and was now dealing with the results. That evening, I was working in my garage when Adam came over. Beer? He offered, holding out a cold bottle. Thanks. We leaned against my workbench, drinking beer and talking about nothing important. It occurred to me that this was what I'd been missing during my marriage. Simple, honest friendship with someone who had no agenda beyond spending time together. You seem different, Adam observed, more relaxed. I feel different, like I finally figured out who I am when I'm not trying to be what someone else wants me to be. Any thoughts about dating again? I laughed. Maybe eventually, but right now I'm enjoying being alone. Turns out I'm pretty good company. The best relationships start when you don't need them, Adam said. When you're complete on your own and someone else just adds to what's already there. Is that from a fortune cookie? Probably, but it's still true. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Kelly at the grocery store. She looked older, tired, but not unhappy. We made polite conversation. How was work? How was the weather? That sort of thing. As we were saying goodbye, she looked at me with something that might have been regret. Jason, she said, I know this doesn't change anything, but I really am sorry, for all of it. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or hidden agenda. I didn't find any. I know you are, I said. And I'm sorry too. Sorry that it came to this. Sorry that we couldn't find a way to fix what was broken before it was too late. Do you think we could ever be friends again? Someday? I thought about it honestly. Maybe. But not today, and not for a long time. Too much has happened. She nodded, understanding. Take care of yourself, Jason. You too, Kelly. I watched her walk away, pushing her cart toward the checkout line, and felt something close to peace. The anger was gone, the desire for revenge satisfied. What remained was just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that I'd handled a bad situation as well as I could, that I'd protected myself and maintained my dignity throughout the process. That night, I called my airline's scheduling department and picked up an extra flight, Dallas to Seattle, leaving early the next morning. As I prepared for the trip, I felt the familiar excitement of going somewhere new, of being responsible for safely transporting people to their destinations. At 37,000 feet over Colorado, with the autopilot engaged and the sky clear ahead, I realized that I'd learned something important from the whole experience with Kelly and Troy. I'd learned that I was stronger than I'd thought, more resourceful than I'd imagined, and more capable of taking care of myself than I'd ever had to prove before. I'd also learned that revenge, when properly executed, wasn't about causing pain. It was about ensuring that people faced the natural consequences of their choices without being able to hide from them or shift the blame to someone else. Kelly had chosen to have an affair. Troy had chosen to pursue a married woman while engaging in illegal business practices. I had simply made sure that those choices led to their logical conclusions. The radio crackled with a transmission from air traffic control, bringing me back to the present. I responded professionally, adjusted our heading slightly, and settled in for the rest of the flight. Below us, the landscape stretched out in all directions. Mountains, plains, cities, and small towns, full of people making choices that would define their futures. Some of those choices would be good, some bad, some neutral. But all of them would have consequences, and those consequences would shape the next chapter of their stories. My story had taken an unexpected turn, but I was satisfied with how I'd navigated through the turbulence. The altitude sickness that had threatened to bring me down had instead taught me how to fly higher and with more purpose than ever before. As we began our descent into Seattle, I smiled at the irony. Sometimes you have to fall a long way before you learn how to soar.